I hope this will be our last video in our examination of the animal kingdom here. And we're looking at this group of animals that headed to land and became the terrestrial animals. And we saw our example with the amphibians that are living a dual life. They've got characteristics of the fish, and they've got some adult forms that are able to live a terrestrial life on land that are out there. And one of those major adaptations that they did was that cutaneous example that is out there. And if we go up to the next stage in it, again, think about that idea of the bryophytes becoming the ferns that are out there that became the gymnosperms. They are going through these transitions as they protect their bodies from drying out, but also they started to develop adaptations to protect their children. And we can see some similar kinds of adaptations going on when we look at these terrestrial animals that are out there. And if we look at our next group that's out there, we see our reptile clade. So again, when you're looking at a clade, you're looking at a group of evolutionary related animals that are out there. And when you look at the adaptations that took place in this, look at all of these organisms that we see here. They all have a waterproof skin that contains keratin protein and waxy lipids. So they develop these scales to give them additional protection that the frogs and the salamanders that are out there. But this did lead to a problem. Those organisms could breathe through their skin or do cutaneous respiration. Now you need to definitely develop a method that's going to allow you to breathe through your mouth or your nose so that you can get the air into your body, because now your skin is no longer permeable. In terms of these organisms, they also did another adaptation to conserve body water, and they're going to get rid of nitrogen waste products using a uric acid paste. So think about bird crap on your car that is out there. It's that uric acid pasty stuff is what they're using to actually get rid of some extra nitrogen that develops in your body. The final real distinct adaptation that we can see with these reptiles is now they need to find some way of protecting their young, but they need to be in a watery environment. And the solution that developed through the evolutionary processes is what's known as an amniotic egg. So it's a fluid-filled container where that embryo is going to develop. And if you think about a chicken egg that is out there, it actually does allow the exchange of gases through that shell, so that the little chicken embryo can breathe as it's developing there. So effectively, they're still keeping that aquatic environment inside the egg, which means there's less dependence on water for that development, and this is going to allow these animals to move to much drier areas and basically expand their habitat where they could exist out there. We still find these amniotic membranes that you would see on the inside of an egg out there. They're still present in mammals out there like us with an amniotic sac. So if we consider this group here, you can see all these different members, from snakes to lizards to turtles to your dinosaurs. But notice there's also the birds out here. And this was really surprising when people first hypothesized this, because they always classified birds as a close relative. But it turns out really what you can say is, what's a modern day dinosaur? Look at a chicken. That is the same type of animal that you're looking at. You're just looking at a branch off of that tree of life where the dinosaurs went extinct, and all of these branches kept developing and diversifying over time. And we do see one distinct difference when we compare the reptile clade that is out there. One group of them, the non-bird reptiles, are what are known as ectotherms. And this is what people refer to as cold-blooded animals, which is a really bad misnomer, because these animals do not have cold blood. They basically are going to obtain their body heat from the environment. They still need to have a warm internal body temperature, but they are not able to generate that heat internally. They get it from sitting out in the sun. And you can see, if you look at this bearded dragon, it's actually breathing in order to help adjust its internal body temperature. And one of the reasons that these non-bird reptiles might have done this ability to obtain body heat from the environment is it allows you to survive on much, much fewer calories, which means You don't have to eat as much in order to survive. You basically sit around and let the environment generate your body heat, and that's going to allow them to survive on less food. When you look at the bird reptiles that are out there, they are distinctly different. They are known as endotherms, and if we look at this, we can see the ectotherms' body temperature depends on the environment, but look at the endotherms. This is what people refer to as warm-blooded animals, but no, that's not. Their temperature is coming internally. You generate your own body heat when you break down your food or you shiver your muscles to basically keep yourself warmer and maintain that body temperature. And the other adaptation you find when you look at these birds is instead of using their skin to make those scales, they modified those scales, and those are what feathers actually are. Birds in general also have other adaptations that make them lighter. Their bones are really honeycomb kind of structures. They only have one ovary and they use a beak instead of teeth. And overall, these kinds of adaptations are going to make them lighter so that they will be able to fly. And the hypothesis is that these bird reptiles formed the feathers in order to provide extra insulation and allow them to become endotherms. And then some of those bird ancestors were able to basically hop, and those feathers started to develop more survival advantages for the ones that could basically fly, catch their food. Well, actually, they would glide at first, and they could catch their food, but also get away from predators. So nature presumably selected for these wings with feathers as an advantage for these reptile birds that are out there. All right, we finally come to our last group of these animals that are out there, and we are finally looking at mammals. And when you look at mammals, these are tetrapods, so again, four-footed animals that are out there that live on land, although there are some mammals that do live in the ocean, like whales, and those are ones where they evolved on land and then went back to the aquatic environment in the ocean. But when you look at mammals that are out there, they are warm-blooded, so again, that endotherms, and they do have hair, and they develop mammary glands to basically provide nutrition for their young. And when you look at the fossil evidence, they think the first true mammals that developed out there were probably small nocturnal insect eaters that arose around 200 million years ago. And so unlike some of the things that you would see out there, mammals did exist during that time period when reptiles or dinosaurs were roaming the earth, but these were a much smaller version of mammals. So you wouldn't expect to see a horse running around with a dinosaur chasing after it, because those horses had not evolved yet. The ancestor for the horse that you could see out there would be something much smaller, like this little guy in the tree. Granted, this is a modern-day version of that branch that is out there. And when we look at the mammals that are out there, we can divide them up into three groups that are really kind of interesting when you look at the differences. There is a group of mammals out there known as monotremes, and these are actually egg-laying mammals. And so it's really kind of a strange thing for us to think about, that these organisms are laying an egg, and then they're turning around and feeding their young milk from mammary tissue. But the eggs are basically held within the mother's reproductive tract until they're almost ready to hatch right there. So it's kind of like what we are used to thinking of with mammals, but they do have that egg during this process. And when the young hatch from the eggs, that's when the female is going to start secreting milk from this ridge of mammary tissue along the ventral side or the bottom side of her body there. The other kind of weird thing when you look at the monotremes, they do actually have one opening for urine and feces and reproduction. So rather than having multiple separate openings like we do, they are going to be using one hole for all three of these kinds of things. The other group that we can see here are the marsupials, and these are basically taking an advancement from your monotremes over there. They are going to give birth to a baby that is going to hang out inside the pouch for the mother. So imagine that these guys, instead of going through 3 trimesters like what we see with humans, you go through 1 trimester, maybe 2 trimesters, so that this fetus can develop enough that it actually is birthed and then it hangs out inside that pouch right here. There is still going to be the connection between that growing fetus and the mother through the placenta tissue right there. But really, when you look at marsupials, they are embryonic at birth, and they're going to hang out inside of here and feed off of the mother's milk as they get bigger and bigger in that little pouch for the marsupial. The last one that we are looking at ourselves now is what's known as the eutherian mammals that are out there. And there's 16 different orders of these mammals that are out there, so quite a few groups, but they all share one thing in common. All of them, the female has a placenta that is tissue partly from the mother and partly from the growing fetus, and that is going to connect the fetus to the mother and allow the exchange of gases from the mom. Also, fluids and nutrients and waste are going to be exchanged between the mom and that growing fetus there. So this is going to allow a more longer association between the mother and her young that are out there. And if you look at the eutherians, think about when you see these babies being born, they tend to be more fully developed at birth. And if we look at the development past these stages here, now we're starting to look at inside of this class Mammalia, now we've hit the primate order. And this is a mammalian group with a wide variety of animals that probably evolved maybe around 55 million years ago. And if we look at the end of this product over here with Homo sapiens, the best evidence that has been found is estimating probably about 200,000 years ago, we get this branch that separates the humans from the rest of the primate order that's out there. And if you look at all of these primates here, they are probably descended from an ancestor that was living out there in the trees. And so think about, what do you need to live in trees? You're going to need a pretty good shoulder joint because you're going to be grabbing onto trees. You also have to be able to bend that joint all over the place. You need really good hand-eye coordination. You need a hand that's going to allow you to grab onto these tree branches. And you also need to be able to gauge distances so you can reach out and grab onto things. And so that's where this binocular vision with the eyes in the front of your face really came in handy. And it's a characteristic we can see conserved in all of these primates out here. We divide these guys up into basically two groups that are out there. These are the prosimians, and prosimian literally means before monkeys that are out there, and you can see characteristics shared by all of these organisms right here, from your lemurs to your loris to your tarsier right here. They tend to be nocturnal animals, and they are much smaller than the other kinds of primates that we see out there. Not only small in terms of their body size, but also in terms of their brains. They do tend to rely a little bit more on their sense of smell, and so they've got a little bit more developed nose with that wet pad on the end to allow them to smell a little bit better. And then our final, last one that we can look at, we can take a look at our anthropoids. So these include monkeys and apes that have larger brains, and their claws are modified a little bit to give them flattened fingernails that are out there. They do have much larger bodies here, and if you look at their brain cases, they tend to have a more rounded skull, so their brains are going to be a little bit bigger. And if you look at all these examples, you can see they're sitting in this orthograde posture. They are sitting upright. They have, again, taken that arm and shoulder joints and basically strengthened it, and their arms tend to be longer than their legs, except for humans. We are one of the exceptions. We have sort of favored our legs with that bipedal motion to be able to walk around. And when we look at this group that is out there, the other characteristic that we can see is they all have this ability to walk on 2 feet, and they tend to have a little bit longer pregnancies compared to the prosimians that are out there. So hopefully you've enjoyed this examination of members of the animal kingdom and have picked up a new appreciation for the vast diversity of animals that we can find surrounding us on the planet.